This is a variation of breathing on hands and knees where we're adding an intentional hip shift. Place your yoga block beneath one knee and come down to hands and knees, shoulders directly over your wrists and keeping your hips in line over your knees, even though one hip is shifted up with the block. If a yoga block is too high and makes your hips shift off to one side, you can use something smaller like a thinner yoga block, a book, or a rolled up towel or yoga mat under your knee. Keep soft elbows as you press up and away from the ground through the underside of your armpits and down toward your pinky fingers. This activates through the serratus, lifts the sternum, and creates space between your shoulder blades. Keep a nice long spine and gaze forward on the ground or your mat. Take a good inhale here into the space between your shoulder blades, your back, and down to the back of your pelvic floor. You should feel length and space created through the back of the pelvic floor and glute on the side that the knee is elevated. Take a series of inhales and exhales here as you hold the offset hip position on one side, and then you can switch sides, elevating the other knee and hip and repeating breaths on that side as you find length through that glute and back pelvic floor. As another option, once you have done a series of breaths while holding the offset all fours position, you can practice some hip shifts in this position. With these dynamic hip shifts, you want your hips stacked directly over your knees and shoulders over wrists, pressing through the ground with the underside of your arm down to your pinky, and again lifting the sternum and creating space between the shoulder blades. Take an inhale into your back and down to the posterior pelvic floor, and then exhale, press your elevated knee into the block as you lift the opposite hip and knee up, in effect externally rotating the hip that's on the block. This rotation happens through the pelvis as your femur stays fixed over your elevated surface. Once again, inhale as you lower the floating knee and hip down toward the ground. This brings the elevated hip into internal rotation. Then as you exhale, press back up out of the elevated knee and hip that are on the block, and that brings them into external rotation as you raise the floating knee and hip up off the ground. Take care that you are not swinging or rocking the hip side to side as you lift and lower the floating knee and hip. You should feel length and space created through the glute and posterior pelvic floor in the hip on the side that is raised on the yoga block.